I bet you didn't know Chucky has a sister. The red hair, that evil stare. But few know about his sister, Christina. She lurks in the shadows, a forgotten toy in an old dusty attic, waiting. Just like Chucky, she yearns for chaos. But her brand of evil? It's different, far more insidious. A young boy, maybe 10, stood frozen in the doorway. His eyes darted across the room, settling on a porcelain doll perched on his shelf. Christina. He could have sworn her head had turned, those blue eyes following him. He shook his head, attributing it to the shadows from the street lamp outside. Turning back towards his door, he thought he heard it. A faint giggle like wind chimes in a storm. Suddenly a crash from downstairs. His heart pounded in his chest. He spun around. Christina was gone. Terror gripped him. He was alone in the house. Or so he thought. Christina was out there, somewhere. And she was just getting started. The boy, Danny, crept down the hallway. Each step was hesitant, filled with dread. The floorboards creaked under his weight. The silence felt heavy, suffocating. He reached his sister's room. The door was ajar, casting a sliver of ominous light into the hallway. A single word escaped his lips, barely a whisper. "Katie?" A cold breeze seemed to emanate from the room, sending shivers down Danny's spine. He pushed the door open slowly, wincing at the groan of the old hinges. On the floor, amid scattered dolls and stuffed animals, lay Katie's prized possession, her grandmother's antique music box. Its delicate ballerina figurine was broken, porcelain face shattered. Danny's breath caught in his throat. He knew that music box. It had been on Katie's nightstand just that morning, perfectly intact. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of an intruder. "Katie?" he called out again, his voice louder this time, edged with panic. Stillness. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on Katie's wall. Then, he heard it. A soft whisper, barely audible. It seemed to come from the shadows in the corner of the room, the ones cast by the single flickering streetlight outside. Danny. His blood ran cold. It wasn't Katie's voice, it was higher, thinner, laced with a chilling sing-song quality. The voice of a child, but not a human child. He backed slowly out of his sister's room, never taking his eyes off the shadows. Fear propelled him down the hallway. He had to find Katie. He found her in the living room, sitting on the floor, her back to him. She was playing with her dollhouse, seemingly oblivious to the terror that gripped Danny's heart. "Katie!" he cried, rushing over to her. Relief washed over him, momentarily chasing away the fear. He knelt beside her, pulling her close. "Katie, you're okay." But as he looked down at her, his blood ran cold once more. In her hand, held carefully, was a porcelain doll. A doll with fiery red yarn hair and a wide, menacing grin. Chucky. "Where did you get that?" Danny's voice was tight, strained. He tried to pry the doll from Katie's grasp, but her small fingers held on with surprising strength. Katie giggled, a high-pitched, unnatural sound. "Chucky wants to play," she said, her voice devoid of its usual childish warmth. Danny stared at his little sister, his heart pounding in his chest. Her eyes, usually bright and full of life, were vacant, fixated on the doll in her hands. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that something was terribly wrong. This was just the beginning. Christina was here, and she had begun to play her twisted games. Night fell. Darkness clung to the house like a suffocating blanket. Danny lay in bed, his body rigid with fear. Sleep was impossible, not while Christina lurked in the shadows. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind against his window, sent shivers down his spine. He imagined Christina's porcelain face, twisted into a cruel smile, her cold, dead eyes watching his every move. His nightmares were vivid, terrifying. He saw Katie, trapped in a web of porcelain limbs, her laughter echoing through a dark and endless void. He saw Christina's face inches from his own, her blue eyes burning with icy fire. He woke with a gasp, drenched in a cold sweat. The room was still dark, the only light coming from the sliver of moon shining through the window. But something was different. He could feel it. A soft humming filled the air, a child's lullaby, sung in a voice both sweet and chillingly wrong. It seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, vibrating through the very foundation of the house. Danny sat up in bed, his heart pounding in his chest. He recognized the tune. It was the melody from Katie's broken music box, but this was different, twisted, grotesque. He climbed out of bed, drawn by an unseen force. He had to find the source of that sound. He walked towards the wall, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch the cold plaster. "Danny!" The whisper came from behind the wall, barely audible yet sharp as shattered glass. It was Christina's voice, and it was closer than before. The next morning, Danny found Katie in the living room surrounded by her dolls. But these weren't her usual toys. They were arranged in a circle, their lifeless eyes staring inwards at a single object in the center. It was one of Danny's action figures. Its head had been twisted completely around, its painted-on smile now a grotesque grimace. Katie was humming that same eerie lullaby, her fingers tracing patterns on the action figure's chest. "Katie?" Danny's voice was shaky. He knew he should be firm, should take the doll away and tell her to never play with it again. But the fear, the sheer wrongness of the situation paralyzed him. Katie turned, her eyes widening innocently. "Danny, look! Chucky's teaching me a new game!" Her voice was childlike, but the words were laced with an undercurrent of something dark and knowing. Panic welled up inside Danny. He had to get help. He had to tell someone what was happening. He turned to run to find their parents, but a small hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "Don't go, Danny!" Katie's voice was a low hiss, her eyes narrowed. "Chucky doesn't like it when people leave." He tried to pull away, but her grip tightened. A cold dread washed over him. He wasn't just afraid anymore, he was terrified. When he looked back at his sister, she was gone. The dolls were scattered on the floor, their lifeless eyes staring up at the ceiling. The only sound was the faint humming of that chilling lullaby, echoing from the walls. Section 5. Marked by Evil. Danny searched frantically for Katie, his heart pounding in his chest. He checked her room, under the beds, in the closets. She was nowhere to be found. He raced back to the living room, drawn by an unseen force. The humming was louder now, almost deafening. He felt a sharp pain in his hand and looked down to see a thin, red line etched across his palm. It was a perfect image of the porcelain ballerina from Katie's broken music box. He knew, with chilling certainty, that this was Christina's mark. She was here, and she wasn't finished playing her twisted games. Section 1. The Puppet Master's Strings. Chucky was a storm, a whirlwind of violence and rage. He lashed out, a blunt instrument of terror. Christina was different. Her evil was a slow poison, seeping into the cracks of your sanity. Danny, his hand throbbing with Christina's mark, felt the difference keenly. Where Chucky would have attacked, relished in the immediate fear, Christina worked from the shadows. She was playing a game, pulling at the strings of his world. He found his parents in the kitchen, oblivious to the terror that clung to him. He tried to tell them about Katie, about the dolls, about the voice in the walls, but the words wouldn't come. An invisible barrier held him back, a sense of dread choking his throat. Christina was weaving her web, isolating him, turning his own family against him. He could see the doubt in their eyes as he stammered, the subtle shake of their heads. He was alone, trapped in a nightmare of her design. Section 2. Whispers of Doubt. The days that followed were a blur of fear and confusion. Katie remained distant, her eyes vacant, a chilling smile perpetually etched on her lips. She spoke little, and when she did, it was always of Chucky and the games they played. Christina's presence was everywhere, a suffocating weight pressing down on Danny. The humming in the walls intensified, the lullaby a constant haunting reminder of her power. The shadows seemed to twist and contort, taking on the shape of the porcelain doll, her cold blue eyes watching him from every corner. His parents, once a source of comfort and safety, were now strangers. Christina was poisoning their minds, whispering doubts into their ears. They spoke of Danny's imagination, of the stress he must be under. Their concern felt hollow, their words laced with an unspoken accusation. He was a prisoner in his own home, surrounded by those he loved, yet utterly alone. Christina had built her cage not of bars and locks but of fear and paranoia. Danny tried to fight back. He tried to explain, to show them the mark on his hand, the twisted tableau of Katie's dolls. But Christina had anticipated his every move. Each attempt to expose her only served to solidify the illusion she was crafting. The mark on his hand, once a burning reminder of her presence, faded into a thin, white scar. When he tried to show his parents, they saw nothing but a faint scratch, easily dismissed as a child's mishap. The dolls, when he rearranged them, mysteriously returned to their previous positions, their unblinking eyes mocking his every effort. Each failure chipped away at his sanity. His parents, once sympathetic, now looked at him with a mixture of pity and fear. Their once warm embraces became stiff and hesitant. He saw the doubt in their eyes, the unspoken question. Was Danny becoming the danger? Christina was winning. She was turning his family against him, using their love as a weapon. She was a master manipulator, a puppeteer of paranoia, and he was her helpless marionette. Danny retreated further into himself, his only solace the growing certainty that he wasn't crazy. He knew deep down that Christina was real, her evil a tangible presence that clung to him like a shroud. He avoided Katie, her blank stares and unnatural pronouncements chilling him to the bone. He spent his days hiding in his room, the humming in the walls a constant, throbbing reminder of his captivity. He drew pictures, frantic scribbles of his terror, but even his art betrayed him, the images twisting into grotesque parodies of his fear. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage, surrounded by the remnants of his former life, yet utterly alone. The laughter of children playing in the street outside was a torment, a reminder of the world that Christina had stolen from him. He was drowning in a sea of fear and doubt, each wave pulling him further down into the abyss of Christina's madness. And there was no one to throw him a lifeline. Chucky was a hammer, shattering the facade of safety with brutal force. His terror was immediate, visceral, a bloody spectacle that left no room for doubt. But Christina's terror was different. She was a surgeon, her instrument a scalpel of fear, meticulously dissecting the bonds of trust and love. Chucky sought to destroy. Christina sought to control. She wanted to break him, to twist him into a reflection of her own twisted will. She wanted him to doubt his own sanity, to push him to the brink where he would beg for the release of madness. Chucky's rampage would leave a trail of bodies, a bloody testament to his rage. Christina's reign of terror would leave something far more insidious, a shattered mind, a family torn apart by suspicion and fear. Danny, trapped in the web of her making, understood this with chilling clarity. Chucky was terrifying, but Christina was far, far worse. He looked at his reflection in the window, his face pale and drawn, his eyes reflecting the terror that consumed him. He barely recognized himself. Christina was changing him, warping him into something he didn't recognize. A chill ran down his spine, an icy finger tracing a path down his back. He could feel her presence in the room, watching him, savoring his fear. He was hers now, a plaything for her amusement. He closed his eyes, willing himself to be strong, to fight against the despair that threatened to engulf him. But deep down he knew the truth. Christina was always one step ahead. She had planned for everything. This was just the beginning. The terror had only just begun. The idea came to Danny in a fever dream, a way to fight back. He would force Christina to reveal herself. He would expose her evil to the light. He would hold a seance. He knew it was dangerous. He could feel Christina's icy fingers tightening around his mind, urging him to reconsider. But the desperation, the need to prove his sanity, outweighed the fear. He gathered the tools of his rebellion in secret candles from the kitchen drawer, a chipped teacup from his mother's china cabinet, a tattered photograph of Katie before her eyes turned vacant. He even dared to take Christina, placing the porcelain doll at the center of his makeshift altar. As night fell, he lit the candles, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the wall. His heart pounded in his chest, a drumbeat of fear and defiance. He was walking a razor's edge, challenging a force he barely understood. He closed his eyes, summoning the courage to speak. "Christina," he whispered, his voice trembling, "I know you're here. I know what you're doing." Silence. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. The candles flickered violently, their flames turning an unnatural shade of blue. The air grew cold, a bone-chilling frost that seemed to emanate from the porcelain doll. He could feel Christina's rage, a palpable force pressing down on him. "You will regret this, Daniel," a voice hissed, a whisper that seemed to come from inside his own head. It was Christina, her voice a chilling blend of childlike innocence and ancient malice. "Show yourself," Danny cried, his fear giving way to a surge of anger. "Face me, you coward!" The room plunged into darkness. The candles sputtered and died, their flames extinguished in an instant. A cold, small hand clamped onto his wrist. Danny gasped, his body paralyzed with terror. He recognized the touch. It was Katie. But it wasn't the warm, familiar grasp of his little sister. It was something cold, unyielding, like the touch of death itself. "You shouldn't have done that, Danny," Katie's voice whispered in his ear, the words devoid of emotion, a hollow echo of her former self. "Chucky's angry now, and he wants to play." The darkness seemed to press in around him, suffocating, all-consuming. He could hear his own heart pounding in his ears, a frantic rhythm against the silence. He was trapped, alone in the darkness with the creatures that had stolen his sister, his family, his sanity. And then, a giggle, high-pitched, chilling, echoing through the darkness. It wasn't Katie's giggle, it was Christina's, and it was the last thing Danny heard before the terror truly began. Danny's screams were swallowed by the darkness. The house, once a sanctuary of warmth and laughter, was now a tomb, echoing with the whispers of unseen horrors. Christina, the forgotten sister, had stepped out of the shadows, her reign of terror just beginning. As days turned into weeks, the line between nightmare and reality blurred. Katie remained a prisoner in her own body, her vacant eyes a haunting reflection of Christina's cold, calculating evil. The house creaked and groaned under the weight of an unseen presence, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay. Danny, his spirit broken, became a shadow of his former self. The boy who once filled the house with laughter now moved like a ghost, his eyes wide with a terror that never abated. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage of Christina's design, his every move watched, his every thought manipulated. The truth, buried beneath layers of fear and paranoia, was far more insidious than anyone could have imagined. Christina wasn't just a doll, a vessel for evil. She was a reflection, a twisted mirror image of the darkness that lurked within the human heart. The revelation when it came was both shocking and inevitable. Christina wasn't born of magic or ritual. She was born of pain, of neglect, of the very human capacity for cruelty. She was the embodiment of every whispered insult, every act of unkindness, every moment of loneliness that had festered in the shadows of a child's heart. The whispers started subtly, a faint humming in the walls, a chill in the air. They grew stronger, feeding on the negative emotions that swirled around her. She listened, she learned, she absorbed the darkness until it became a part of her. She watched as Chucky, her brother in spirit, embraced the chaos of violence and rage, but she craved something more. She wanted to savor the slow, agonizing unraveling of the human psyche, the exquisite torture of watching love turn to suspicion, trust to fear. And so she waited, she watched. And when the time was right, she made her move, choosing her victims carefully, weaving a web of fear so insidious, so pervasive, that it would ensnare not only her intended target, but everyone around him. The house stood silent, a monument to the darkness that had taken root within its walls. The laughter of children no longer reached its windows, replaced by an eerie stillness that seemed to stretch on forever. Christina had won. She had claimed her prize. But evil, like a virus, is never truly contained. It spreads, it mutates, it finds new hosts to inhabit. And Christina, the forgotten sister, was patient. She could wait. She had all the time in the world. Somewhere, in another dusty attic, another forgotten toy lay waiting. She had watched, she had learned, and she had plans of her own. The cycle of terror, fueled by the darkness within, was far from over. It had only just begun. The nightmare, Like Christina's chilling laughter echoed in the silence, a promise of horrors yet to come. Subscribe for more chilling tales.